Mail-order bride's amazing journey. What she discovered about love and a rancher will inspire you. Clara stood on the dusty porch, clutching the envelope like a lifeline. A single letter had changed everything. Her family's struggles, her dreams of becoming a veterinarian, the weight of her past pressing down on her like the Texas sun. She was a mail-order bride now, bound for a rugged rancher named Jake, and the thought sent flares of exhilaration and dread through her. What if she had made the wrong choice? Each bright morning spent in the modest farmhouse felt like an echo now, urging her towards a freedom she could hardly comprehend. Deep down, a flickering ambition wrestled with doubt. Could she reconcile her dreams with the reality she was stepping into? Would a ranch life fulfill her or crush her spirit? The fear of judgment loomed like a storm cloud. What if the town branded her a failure or a desperate woman? The unease coiled in her stomach, but the urge for a new beginning propelled her forward. As she approached the sprawling ranch, the sight of weathered barn wood and blistering heat laid bare another truth. This world was devoid of the familiar comforts she'd known. Jake opened the door, and in his stoic silence, Clara felt the enormity of his grief and the shadow of his late wife. She could see it in his eyes, the guardedness that shattered her confidence. Here she was, arriving with dreams in tow. But what if he saw her only as a replacement? With every hopeful step onto that dusty land, the winds howled dissent. Clara faced whispers of contempt. She was no rancher, just another mail-order bride seeking to escape her life. Each scornful gaze from the townsfolk stung like the harsh sun, igniting determination mixed with self-doubt. She was here. But could she truly carve a place for herself among the roughened hearts and hardened lives? Though Jake maintained his stoic front, he couldn't ignore the fire within Clara. Each late night spent by the campfire brought out her ideas, sustainable ranching practices, transparency with the community, and he listened, torn between admiration and his reservations. Standing by the glowing embers, Clara felt her resolve fortify. These dreams were hers, but could she pull Jake from the shadows while pushing her vision forward? Then the storm hit. A financial crisis threatened the ranch, tensions flaring between Clara's ideas and Jake's stubbornness. The betrayal of a close friend revealed hidden secrets, leaving Clara rattled. Who could she trust? Each evening swelled with unspoken words, Clara's frustrations stirring beneath the surface. If she remained true to herself, could they survive? Yet the ambiance grew heavier, pushing her to confront her loyalties against societal pressures. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications, so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The tension peaked at the town meeting. Clara faced the crowd, heart racing as she presented her vision, only to be met with scornful laughter. Each snicker edged her closer to despair. But she couldn't back down. A woman of her backbone wouldn't. This was her chance to assert herself. Yet Jake lingered in the background, watching her fight with a conflicting blend of pride and pain. What remained of his late wife's presence seeped into the air, suffocating the passion that once ignited their connection. Clara could feel the eyes of the townsfolk weighing upon her, and for the first time, she questioned if the dream she was fighting for was truly hers, or merely an echo of the family she left behind. Would she shatter under the pressure of expectations, losing both herself and the man she was growing to love? As the meeting continued, Clara's heart thudded with urgency, the uncertainty swirling around her like a tempest, pushing her ever closer to a precipice. Would she find support, or was this fight destined for defeat? The realization ignited a blaze within her soul, leaving her standing at a crossroads. What would she sacrifice in pursuit of the life she had envisioned? The meeting hall was thick with tension, a palpable reminder of her isolation. Clara's words hung in the air like a stone in a still pond, rippled but never fully accepted. As laughter faded into silence, she closed her eyes, drawing deep breaths to steady the storm brewing inside her. Was she truly cut out for this? Did she have any credibility at all? Across the room, Jake stood stoic, arms crossed over his chest like a shield. A silent ally, yet a distant figure. She sensed his apprehension. Had her passionate defense turned into a blow that unsettled his vulnerability? Maternal instincts flared, her need to shield him from his own ghosts, igniting a fresh resolve. If only she could breach the walls and bring him toward her light without threatening the remnants of his past. As Clara's gaze sliced through the room, she found a few sympathetic faces among the townsfolk. Those fleeting glimmers of support fueled her ambition. After all, it wasn't just her fight anymore. It was Jake's dream too, albeit one he was hesitant to embrace. Clara waged a silent battle, grappling with the desire for validation while combating the fear of failure. Would they find a way to coalesce their dreams? Or would they fracture under outdated expectations? A shadow of doubt pushed her toward a decision. She took another deep breath, determined to transform the dynamic. Spurred by the strength she mustered from within, she stepped forward, vulnerability radiating from her as she softened her stance. "Look, I know it's easy to dismiss the new girl. I'm not from here. I've never lived this life," she confessed, her heart pounding while honesty poured from her lips like a freshly opened spring. "But I believe in a future for this ranch, the potential it can hold for all of us. I want to work with you, not against you. We can adapt. We can grow together. I need your support, not just for me, but for Jake and this place I've come to love." A low murmur swept through the crowd, and though skepticism lingered, Clara sensed the tide slowly shifting. Jake's expression remained inscrutable, yet a fracture of something warm unfurled in his demeanor. Could he see her as a partner, not a replacement? Was it possible for him to appreciate Clara's ideas without the weight of past memories suffocating him? She turned to meet him with a cautious smile, hopeful he would reflect the trust she longed to share. The tension in his shoulders eased as their eyes locked for a brief moment, an acknowledgement passing between them, their shared struggles and dreams linked in a fragile embrace. But just as a flicker of hope ignited, a voice rang out, shattering the fragile calm. "Why should we listen to you, Clara? You're just a mail-order bride. You don't know the first thing about our ways." The voice cut deep, the taunt sharper than any knife. Clara's insides churned as that very title, once a badge of solidarity, now became a blade. She felt Jake's gaze dart toward her, his protective instincts awakening even in uncertainty. How could she counter this when so many others felt the same? With her heart racing, a decision crystallized. The burgeoning fire within her demanded she confront not only the town, but her own fears. She wasn't just fighting for validation, she was declaring her identity. What worth did a title carry when rooted in purpose? Clara could hear footsteps pounding her way, Jake stepping forward, his resolve hardening. "Enough," he called out, silencing the whispers. "She deserves to bring her ideas. If this ranch is to survive, we need vision, not fear." They stood together, eyes locked in unspoken alliance. The gravity of the moment pressed down harder than ever before. Clara felt the weight of expectations from the townsfolk, the lingering remnants of Jake's pain, and an indomitable sense of purpose surging through her veins. From this position of tentative solidarity, she inhaled deeply, ready to face the impending storm. As the next words swelled on her lips, she realized that it wasn't just her dream hanging in the balance anymore. It was Jake's redemption too, a chance to reshape their destinies in unison. But what if their connection wasn't about just healing, but about triggering an unseen storm ahead? A confrontation loomed, one that might determine if ambitious dreams could coexist with deep-rooted fears. Clara braced herself, ready to navigate these uncharted waters with only the flickering light of hope leading the way. What awaited them both? Would they finally uncover the depth of love and partnership? Or would it all unravel just as swiftly? Clara's resolve crystallized in the charged atmosphere, her heartbeat fluttering with the weight of expectation. The voice that had challenged her still echoed in her mind, but she chose to absorb its sting rather than recoil from it. Anger and determination intertwined, pushing her forward. The world around her seemed to sharpen into focus, and she recognized she had a very real choice to make. "Let's put aside titles and labels for just a moment," she said, her voice steadying, lifting above the murmurs. "I'm here because I believe in the potential of this ranch and what we can do together." Her gaze swept the room, challenging each person's gaze to meet hers. "I didn't come to drag you into the future kicking and screaming. I'm here to find a way that includes all of us. Yes, even the skeptics. I've learned that this life is hard and full of challenges, and the last thing any of us needs is more division." The murmurs softened into a heavy silence. Clara could feel her thoughts crystallizing into a tangible plan, as if the act of vocalizing her beliefs brought clarity. "Every one of you has something unique to contribute," she continued, fueled by the flickering light of conviction. "Imagine what we could do if we pooled our strengths. The experience of the long-time locals with my new ideas. We could transform this ranch. I'm not saying it will be easy, but I believe it's possible." Jake's expression shifted subtly, his rigid posture softening, the tension in his face easing. Clara sensed that he was starting to reassess the contributions of her words. Yet doubt still lingered in the room, evident in the furrowed brows and scrutinized expressions. Clara knew she couldn't rely on mere sentiment. It was time to act. "What if," she proposed, "we held a town meeting? A chance for everyone to voice their thoughts, ideas, concerns, and even their support. You don't have to agree with me, but you can express what matters to you. I want to hear all of it." A hesitant whisper of intrigue passed through the crowd. Fear and resistance wore heavy cloaks, but Clara found solace in the glimmers of curiosity reflecting back at her. To be heard, it was a starting point. Clara glanced at Jake, silently hoping he would see her resolve as a bridge, not a threat. He stepped forward, his voice low but steady. "I think that's a solid idea, Clara. We need dialogue, not silence. We need to face each other's fears openly." One townsman shifted uneasily, his skepticism palpable as he shifted back and forth. "And what if we don't like what we hear? What if it just stirs the pot?" Clara held his gaze, searching for the courage to dismantle his apprehension. "That's the crux of it, isn't it? We're all scared of change, scared of what it means for our future. But let's challenge the idea that fear should dictate our decisions. If we can confront our issues, bring everything to the table, we can emerge stronger together." The air felt charged, a live wire of possibility and trepidation. Clara realized that this wasn't just a proposal, it was a revelation about her own strength, a recognized agency to seek collective growth, despite the very discord clawing at her foundation. With each word she unraveled, she cursed the swirling doubts, coaxing validation from the silence suffocating her. A glimmer of defiance ignited in the townsfolk's eyes, sparked by her fearless vulnerability. It was daunting and liberating to share her vision openly, yet Clara also acknowledged her own vulnerability. She feared the potential backlash should they choose to reject her again, a thought that now lingered just beyond her reach. "Let's create a plan," she said finally, her voice taking on a resolute tone. "We can reach out to each other in this meeting, Not just about the ranch, but what we truly desire for our lives. Clara's heart pounded with a mixture of hope and anxiety, unsure if they would grasp the lifeline she offered. As the crowd began to murmur once more, weighing the possibilities, she glanced quickly at Jake. He met her eyes, and they shared a moment of quiet resolve in uncertainty. Could this be the breakthrough they needed? A step toward healing fractured spirits? But just then, the heavy door of the meeting hall swung open, revealing a familiar face that sent a chill down Clara's spine. Standing there was an unexpected figure from her past, one determined to unravel everything she had worked to build. What would she say? Did this new arrival threaten to shake the fragile groundwork she had just begun to lay? Clara braced herself, ready to confront not just the external force, but any latent doubts residing inside her, knowing that the path before her was rife with unforeseen challenges. Would she find the courage to stand, not just as a partner to Jake, but as a formidable force against her past? Clara's attention shifted from the townsfolk to the door, her muscles taut with apprehension. The person stepping inside was none other than Lila, her former mentor turned adversary. The sharp contours of Lila's expression, veiled yet unmistakable, sent waves of uncertainty crashing through Clara. It was as if mere proximity to the woman could unravel Clara's carefully woven narrative, cause her to stumble back into patterns she meant to leave behind. "Clara!" Lila's voice broke through the thick silence, coating the room in a thin veneer of tension. "I see you haven't wasted any time trying to play the hero." The words hit hard, a bitter reminder of a past where Lila had constantly discredited Clara's ambitions. Clara's instinct was to rebel against the condescension, but she swallowed hard, reminding herself of the resolve she had just summoned. She was not here to be derailed by a ghost from her past. "Lila," Clara responded, her voice steady yet layered with underlying emotion. "I'm here to facilitate a conversation about the ranch and everyone's role in it, including yours." Lila's laughter rang hollow, a sound that felt like nails on a chalkboard. "A conversation? Really? You think talk will suddenly erase the years of mistrust and disappointment? You're dreaming if you think everyone will play nice." The utter dismissal of her efforts gripped at Clara's heart, yet she felt an urgency to counteract the reminders of failure. "I know it's not a quick fix, but it's a start. And it begins by addressing our fears openly. You're a part of this community as much as anyone else." A flicker of surprise crossed Lila's face, but her expression quickly morphed back into skepticism, and she leaned back against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Fine. If you want to listen to grievances, let's hear them. I can guarantee they won't sing your praises." Lila's gaze swept the crowd, the challenge hanging heavily in the air. Clara recognized this moment as pivotal, not just for the townsfolk, but for her own growth. The opportunity to stand her ground and reclaim her narrative beckoned, but it was easier said than done. The throbbing in her chest ached with doubt. What if Lila was right? What if her efforts to unite the community only unveiled deeper divisions? "Perhaps," Clara said, consciously moderating her tone. "That's precisely why we need to have this discussion. It's time to confront the past so we can shape the future." The townsfolk remained silent, their eyes flicking between Lila and Clara. The air was thick with anticipation, tension radiating like static electricity. "Let's put aside our differences for one evening," Clara urged, exhaling the anxiety that had coiled tightly within her. "We owe it to ourselves to understand each other. I know fear and mistrust linger, but they don't need to dictate our choices anymore." Jake stepped forward tentatively, hoping to ease the brewing storm. "Clara has a point. We can't silence voices that shape this ranch. But can we also agree to listen with open minds?" Lila scoffed, but something in her demeanor shifted minutely. Clara seized the moment, determined to draw the positive energy from Jake's support and channel it back among the community. Let us express both grievances and hopes tonight. If we address our fears, maybe we find common ground. Clara spoke not just to them, but to her own inner struggles. The shadow of insecurity that whispered she wasn't capable enough. Sure, but let's not ignore that this isn't just about you anymore, Lila snapped, anger curling her lip. You don't get to choose how we move forward based on your vision alone. As Lila's retort hung in the air, Clara felt the intensity of the moment engulf her. It was an invitation to stand firm in her beliefs amidst the tumult, to forge her way even when challenged. Lila's presence felt like an obstacle, yet Clara sensed something deeper, an opportunity to confront her past and weave that confrontation into her new identity moving forward. The questions loomed large in her mind. Was she strong enough to let her past inform her present without allowing it to dictate her future? She closed her eyes momentarily, steeling herself for the answer. As silence enveloped the space, Clara took a breath, knowing the answer would involve decisions that questioned the essence of who she was becoming. Lila awaited her next move, and it felt like a battle that had only just begun. With newfound clarity, Clara set her sights on the town, the faces of her neighbors reflecting a mix of skepticism and cautious hope. She was no longer escaping who she was. She was embracing the power in her journey. "Let's begin," she announced, decisively interrupting the impending storm within. "Let's talk and see where it leads us." Even as she spoke, Clara wondered how deep the well of resilience ran within her. As conversations swirled around her, she realized that the only way to truly understand herself, and the ranch, was to dive headfirst into the chaos, to emerge transformed. And as the first voice began to rise, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenge, perhaps the real battle, was just unfolding. Would she and her ranch community build bridges or deepen divides once the truths were laid bare? Clara felt the weight of silence pressing down on her, the murmurs of uncertainty flitting through the room like anxious shadows. The vulnerability of the moment wrapped around her like a heavy cloak, yet within its folds was a flicker of fierce determination. She wasn't there to indulge in nostalgia or fear. She wasn't interested in succumbing to a childlike need for approval. "Let's be realistic," Lila interjected, her voice slicing through Clara's thoughts. "It's easy to spout ideals, but what happens after tonight? Will you run off when the going gets tough, or will you actually stay and face what you've stirred up?" Clara felt her pulse quicken, a jolt of adrenaline shooting through her. It was a challenge that echoed in her own mind. How often had she retreated at the first hint of discomfort? The unflinching gaze of her mentor, now adversary, locked onto hers like a lighthouse beam. Responding with a flicker of rebellion, Clara squared her shoulders. "I'm here for the long haul," she said, her voice gaining strength with each syllable. "I won't shy away when the conversations get hard, because that's when clarity emerges, and I'm committed to changing this narrative." Jake's supportive expression bolstered her as she glanced briefly in his direction. But then she met the eyes of her neighbors, their faces a collage of skepticism and hope. They had endured too much to take her words at face value. Clara could sense their scrutiny. Every raised brow challenged her resolve. "Why should we believe you?" A rough voice broke the tension. It was Mark, known for his bluntness. "We've all been let down too many times." Clara inhaled deeply, grappling with her own truth in that instant. It would have been easy to succumb to anger, but a cool wave of calm washed over her. Instead of resisting, she embraced his doubt, finding strength in vulnerability. "Because I know what it's like to feel unheard, to feel lost in your own community," she replied, visibly relaxing into the sentiment rather than resisting it. "If we're going to reshape this ranch, it requires all of us to be active participants, and that starts with accepting where we are, together." Every voice in the room became an echo of her own uncertainties, fueling a flicker of realization within her. She may not have all the answers, but she had something even more valuable, the willingness to navigate ambiguity with them. Seeing a few nods of recognition, Clara felt a shift. The air crackled with a new energy. She had fought her battles alone for far too long. It was time to lean into their shared stories and scars. "What if we share something personal?" Clara proposed, her heart racing. "Maybe we can understand each other better this way." Lila cocked her head, skepticism curling her lips again. "You think stories will change anything?" "Absolutely," Clara replied, her conviction growing. "Sometimes stories reveal the core of who we are, the fears we carry, the hopes we've buried. We can either let those stories isolate us, or we can embrace them and find common ground." The weight of anticipation shifted as Clara turned the focus back on herself. With trembling vulnerability, she shared a moment from her past, a time when her own dreams felt unattainable, how Lila's shadow had nearly snuffed them out. Fear and shame had kept her from pursuing those dreams for so long. "I chose to believe that my voice mattered, that my dreams were valid, no matter how many people tried to silence me," Clara said, vulnerability woven in each word. "I stand here today because of that belief, but I need each of you to confront your stories with that same courage." The murmurs quieted, the gravity of what Clara offered resonating deeply within the hearts of those present. The walls around their vulnerabilities began to crack, and for the first time, Clara sensed that they might reclaim agency together. As the gathering shifted from doubt to introspection, she recognized an emerging power. The journey ahead would not be easy. She would face resistance, perhaps even betrayal. But the possibilities that lay in confronting their truths felt electrifying. Yet, amidst the rising tide of connection, a striking apprehension lingered in the back of her mind. What if, in bearing their truths, they unearthed more chaos than clarity? With that thought, Clara glanced at Lila. "Are you ready to join us in this?" The unyielding reflection in Lila's eyes hinted at a simmering conflict. The time had come to face not just the townsfolk, but also the tumultuous relationship that had so profoundly shaped her journey. The outcome remained uncertain, but Clara was no longer the unsure girl who had left home. She was empowered, and she was ready. As all eyes turned toward Lila, Clara wondered how far they could go in this truly raw dialogue. What if this night sowed the seeds of both pain and possibility? The moment was charged with potential, but doubt hung suspended in the air, a challenge waiting to unfold. The stillness that followed Clara's question felt electric, charged with the weight of expectation. Lila's expression shifted, her brows furrowing as if wrestling with an internal storm. Clara's heart raced, anticipation mingling with a shivering vulnerability. This was the moment she had yearned for. Confrontation, vulnerability, truth. "Do you really want me to lay it all out?" Lila's voice trembled, but it carried an edge that sliced through the air. Clara nodded, unwilling to break the gaze that had held so much history. Exposing Lila's truths would come with its own challenges, but it was imperative, an essential step toward collective healing. "I know how easy it is to hide behind anger or cynicism," Lila continued. "But what does it really change?" Clara felt the air grow dense with unspoken histories. She could feel eyes around the room, flicking between her and Lila, a silent questioning about how far honesty could bridge the chasms they had created. Would they be able to move from animosity to understanding? "Maybe we've all built walls to protect ourselves, walls that are tall and thick," Clara ventured, her voice tentative yet firm. "But what if those walls aren't protecting us? What if they're keeping us isolated?" Lila took a breath, as if she had been granted brief permission to explore her own vulnerability. Clara sensed the shift, a crack in Lila's armor. The room leaned in, their attention riveted as the walls of distrust began to tremble. "Fine," Lila released a strained laugh, tracing the corners of her mouth as if testing the boundaries of this honesty. I always felt like you were doing it all wrong, like you didn't belong here. I thought if I ridiculed you, it would deter you from trying to make a name for yourself. The admission fell heavily, the truth turning over in Clara's chest. It was a surge of clarity. The resentment that had haunted their interactions was rooted in Lila's fear of inadequacy. But it only made me more determined to prove you wrong, Clara countered, refusing to let shame cloud her voice. I thought you were untouchable, that your confidence was impenetrable. I wanted that for myself. It kept me silent. Their vulnerability hung in the air, revealing a shared journey marred by misunderstanding. Clara's thoughts raced. Their admission felt like a fragile thread, weaving a tapestry of interlinked stories. Each revelation peeled back layers of experiences they had kept tucked away, drawing the room closer to an unexpected communion. Maybe we can't change the past, Clara suggested, feeling a warmth gathering as the neighbors began to share in soft murmurs. But we can shape what comes next. Lila appeared to contemplate her words, a flicker of determination igniting in her expression. You're right. I don't want our stories to keep us apart anymore. Relief washed over Clara. This moment provided the clarity she sought, yet still, contradictions churned within. There was undeniable fear that lay underneath this emerging connection, fear that would rear its head again when challenges emerged. Mark's voice sliced back in. Great, so where do we go from here? I'm sick of bare words without action standing behind them. The skepticism echoed, forcing Clara to confront the deeper issue. She wasn't merely facing Lila's challenges. She was also tasked with uniting a room full of disparate experiences and emotions. Clara knew she had to lead them somewhere actionable, but the exact steps eluded her. We need to define our next chapter together, she said, heart pounding. Maybe we hold each other accountable, share not just our stories, but our commitments. There was silence, a contemplative hush that allowed Clara to gather her thoughts. She sought something tangible, a path through the ambiguity. What if we each wrote down a personal goal that ties back to our stories and shared them? That way, we can support one another in our journeys. The idea hung, fragile with possibility. After all, she continued, conjuring a hope that pulsed through her veins, the first step to reclaiming our power is acknowledging where we want to go. Eyes lit with cautious curiosity, but the tiny flickers of hope couldn't extinguish the shadows dancing on their faces. Clara intuited the complexity ahead. Would her vision hold under the weight of their realities? The journey would surely test their collective resolve. Yet as Clara observed Lila's nodding affirmation, determination locked on her features, she felt a swell of conviction. If they could navigate this uncertain terrain of self-discovery together, they might just unearth the strength pooled beneath their own barriers. As the gathering began to write down their aspirations, Clara felt the rush of possibility spark to life. But amidst this burgeoning unity, a chilling thought lingered. Could everyone truly withstand the demands of honesty? What if revealing their aspirations exposed deeper wounds instead of healing them? Warily, Clara glanced again at Lila, curiosity knitting her brow. Are you really willing to engage with the fallout of our truths, Lila? The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Clara sensed they stood not only at the precipice of shared growth, but also at the threshold of something that could either mend or shatter their fragile bonds. The room held its breath, the weight of Clara's question pulling each individual deeper into their own introspections. Lila's expression transformed. The initial spark of determination faltered slightly, as her resolve collided with the real possibility of confronting her demons. Clara searched Lila's face for answers, knowing that Lila was as much a part of her journey as she was. I don't know, Lila stammered, her bravado waning. What if I'm just a mess of contradictions? What if my truth is uglier than I think? The frail honesty hung between them, swirling like smoke. Clara could see the fear bubbling beneath Lila's hardened facade. Lila was standing at a moment of vulnerability that Clara understood only too well. They were both learning to navigate their own imperfections, and they had sacrificed so much to wear their masks. "There's strength in laying it bare," Clara urged, her tone like a lifeline offered. "If we can't face ourselves, how will we face each other? This is an opportunity." While Clara spoke, she felt a stirring within herself, a recognition of her own journey filled with doubts and aspirations. Driven by a sense of urgency, she stood taller, channeling the courage she had mustered while crafting her path forward. The idea of accountability struck a chord deep within. Perhaps in sharing their hopes, they could forge a new identity, not just as individuals, but as a community wielding newfound power. Mark interjected, his skepticism simmering. "You make it sound easy. What if nobody actually wants to hear these truths?" His arms crossed, eyes scanning the room, searching for evidence of their collective readiness. Clara inhaled sharply, facing the reality of doubt. His concerns echoed within her. Would everyone genuinely embrace the courage to be vulnerable? The thought felt like an electric pulse, sparking notions of both hope and fear. "We can't predict everyone's response," she admitted, creativity bursting forth like a new idea. "But we can create a safe space where we come together rather than apart. Perhaps even form small groups to explore our thoughts before we share them out loud." An array of expressions crossed Lila's face as she wrestled with the concept. Clara could almost see the gears turning, weighing the risks against the potential of emotional liberation. Little did Lila know, her decision could unlock more than just personal growth. It could cultivate a profound sense of understanding. "Small groups," Lila echoed, her brow furrowed in contemplation. "That might help. But what if people don't open up?" The rawness of vulnerability hung in the air like a taut string, ready to snap. "Then we learn," Clara offered. "The point is to engage, to lift each other up even when honesty hurts. If the conversations fail or lead to discomfort, we can regroup and reassess. Growth never happens without struggle." The reality of her words settled in, imbued with truth. Clara finally recognized that her journey was not just about pursuing her own aspirations, but also about creating a space for others to explore their truth as well. It was about alchemy, where discomfort could ignite transformation. A moment of heavy silence met her request, thick with consideration. Eyes scanned one another, urging clarity while simultaneously grappling with uncertainty. She observed the collective hesitation, a mirrored reflection of her own fears. Suddenly, the tension shifted as Lila, with tentative strength, spoke up. "I want to try. I want to see if we can really support each other. But let's agree on one thing. If someone shares, it must remain confidential. No judgment." Relief washed over Clara, a light piercing through the clouds that had loomed. Lila's willingness crackled with the charge of something significant, a thread of connection woven from their truths, plucked right from the dissonance they had created over time. The group began forming small circles, and Clara noticed that each aspect of vulnerability they offered catalyzed an encouraging atmosphere. One by one, faces lit up with tentative excitement as they deliberated under the protective veil of confidentiality Lila had proposed. As Clara joined a huddle, her heart raced with both anticipation and profound trepidation. Would this break their cycle of hurt? Would they emerge stronger on the other side? Amidst the gathering of raw emotions and subdued hope, the realization hit her. Clara was on the brink of confronting not just Lila's truths, but her own as well. The past would no longer dictate their paths. Rather, the shared endeavor could sow seeds of hope. Her breath caught as they passed around notes, observing each other's ambitions through whispered confessions. Yes, vulnerability was a delicate dance. The rhythm required finesse, trust, and resilience. Clara felt herself transforming in real time, grasping the weight instructions had on her soul. Yet the lingering fear occupied the space around them. Would they have the courage to face what surfaced in those tender revelations? Could Clara lead them through the storm looming just beyond their horizon? And with that question echoing in her mind, Clara turned to Lila again, sensing a shift in the atmosphere that hinted at the challenges yet to come, a profound test of self-acceptance and resolve, drawing ever closer. As Clara settled into the small circle, she felt the pulse of everyone's nerves, a collective thrum of uncertainty and tentative hope. Her palms were clammy against the rough paper of the note she had penned in a rush. It contained her aspirations, her deeply buried ambitions. But as she looked around, the weight of vulnerability felt suffocating. Each person sitting there was a mirror reflecting her own fears, the doubts swirling like ghosts ready to haunt them all if given the slightest nudge. Lila initiated the first round. Clearing her throat, she spoke softly yet assertively, revealing snippets of her life intertwined with dreams crushed beneath past failures. The group absorbed her words with thoughtful silence, and Clara marveled at the strength it took to peel back those layers. Lila was bringing forth a fragmented truth into a safe space, courage shining as brightly as it had ever been in their relationship. Being seen feels so foreign, Clara thought, her own heart racing as she prepared for her turn. It was her chance to untangle herself from the artist's block that had plagued her work for months. But what would she reveal? Would exposing her struggles liberate her art or shatter her confidence further? As notes continued to circulate, Clara lost herself momentarily in the rhythm of vulnerability. The encouraging nods and comforting glances in the room painted a picture of communion, a bond rooted in shared burdens. She wanted to contribute to that tapestry, yet the thread of self-doubt tangled more tightly around her. Finally, it was her turn to share. Clara's voice wavered, every word a stone dropped into an echoing void. "I've always hidden behind my creations," she began, only able to maintain eye contact with the floor. "I've let them speak for me because I'm scared that if I let myself out, I'll never accept what comes back." The raw honesty dripped from her words, pulling the group closer. Internal revisions swept her mind like a tide, washing over the moments of failure she had run from, all the times she chose safety over authenticity. This was an opportunity, yet every grain of sand she let slip through her fingers reminded her of her missed chances to share, to connect, to grow. Maybe, Clara mused, her heart quickening, is laying bare the missing piece. If I'm terrified of the backlash, what does that reveal about my self-worth? The question carried within it a seed of revelation. In learning to face herself, perhaps she could finally embrace her craft more openly. Laughs and soft gasps punctuated the revelations within her small circle. A growing warmth enveloped them, wrapping around Clara, when she felt a hand touch her shoulder. Lila's aura radiated empathy that prompted a spark of recognition. Their struggles began to intertwine, forming a tapestry woven of shared values and aspirations. But no sooner had Clara tasted that warmth than doubt drove a hole right through. Returning to the circle, Mark's serious demeanor cast a palpable shadow. "You can't expect this to change everything, can you?" he asked, his voice looming with skepticism. Clara felt a chill. His words sliced through the camaraderie that had been built, exposing the fragility of their newfound connection. What if Mark's cynicism was warranted? What if honesty led to pain rather than healing? Yet conflicted determination surged within Clara as she processed his words. "If we crumble under doubt, how do we learn to emerge?" she countered, resolution firming her stance. The sweat on her brow hinted that this was not just a group of hesitant souls. They were warriors on the line, and Clara had unearthed the warrior within. As the hour stretched toward its limit, whispers turned into vulnerable confessions that swirled into palpitation-filled air. Even amidst the uncertainty, there was the sense of forging ahead, a mix of trepidation and exhilaration lighting up the room. This was no ordinary meeting. It was a crucible for transformation, and they stood on the brink. Each person's emergence from their shell felt like a heartbeat echoing in perfect sync, signaling that the time had come to heal through the storm of their truths. Clara furrowed her brow, contemplating the complexity ahead, but her anticipation grew into a fierce hope. As silence fell, readying to move to the next stage of their journey, Clara's mind churned with deeper questions. Would this newfound courage withstand the trials looming on the horizon? Would they emerge stronger, or would the shadows of their past threaten to engulf them once again? The answers felt closer than ever, yet more terrifying than before. With a shared breath, Clara recognized the path diverging before them, a moment of choice etched in time as they prepared to confront their unasked questions. And with that reality pressing in, she turned back to Lila, their eyes locking with unspoken resolve, feeling the weight of everything that was yet to come. Clara's heart raced in the silence that followed their session, a lull of tension hanging in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Her mind flickered to the mixture of emotions she had felt: fear, relief, and a simmering determination. The questions that churned deep within her became more demanding, almost accusatory. What was she truly capable of, if she chose to strip away the layers she had wrapped around herself? It was Lila who broke the silence, her voice steady yet infused with vibrancy. "We're going to take what we shared today and create," she proposed, eyes sparkling with an unrestrained enthusiasm. "Let's push ourselves beyond this moment and turn vulnerability into art." The idea struck Clara like a jolt. The thought of channeling her raw honesty directly into her work ignited something deep inside her, a flicker of hope that had long been overshadowed by self-doubt. Yet as the group encouraged the notion, Clara felt the familiar clamp of fear tighten around her chest. What if the art she created from this vulnerable place was not enough? Or worse, what if it exposed her inadequacies even more? "Why not explore the deeper layers of our experiences?" Lila continued, painting a vivid picture for the reluctant participants. "Let's collaborate on performances, write new pieces, create visual art that speaks our truths. What if we pooled our pain and created something beautiful together?" The notion of communal creativity reframed Clara's apprehension into possibility, but how could she risk exposing her worthlessness through collaborations? What if her art elicited the very judgment she feared? The room pulsed with energy as others joined the conversation, their voices intertwining into a cohesive dialogue about expression. But Clara felt like a floating fragment, disconnected, yet yearning for connection. "Clara, what do you think?" Lila asked, searching her eyes. The question hung in the air, heavy with expectation. Suddenly all eyes were upon her, illuminating her insecurities. To speak or not speak, this was a decision that she needed to navigate with caution. With her pulse racing, Clara pulled upon reserves she didn't know she possessed. I think we need to be honest with what we share. No holding back," she murmured, surprised by her own conviction. Their collective history bound them together, a delicate web woven from their shared struggles. Perhaps in that honesty lay her opportunity to break the chains of self-doubt. "Let's do it," Mark interjected, surprisingly supportive. What could possibly go wrong? His flippant disposition lent Clara's growing courage a semblance of foundation. Maybe the beauty of this venture lay in the imperfections that would undoubtedly arise. As they started brainstorming, Clara found herself leaning in, each idea prompting a reflection of their respective vulnerabilities. What began as caution morphed into a domino effect of creativity. Clara proposed a living gallery, showcasing both individual pieces and the collective's work, allowing them to confront their shared fears head-on. The concept resonated, igniting a spark throughout the group. The prospect of creating something meaningful from their personal narratives sparked a fire in Clara, a tension wrapped in excitement. Yet, as enthusiasm bubbled beneath the surface, a nagging fear crept back in. What if her truth, the rawest representation of herself, wasn't enough? Clara buried her head in her hands, grappling with the mounting weight of expectations. She couldn't continue to furnish her existence with fear. Shifting her focus, she began to outline her vision, detailing the depth she wanted to explore. The once unsettling air began to shift. Her creative flow surged with a more profound understanding of purpose, the symbiosis between vulnerability and strength. Just as the room thrummed with promise, a sudden thought struck her like lightning. What if she was only skimming the surface of what could emerge through their narratives? What if their vulnerabilities hid deeper truths that could reshape not just their art, but also themselves? Yet the realization also bore the weight of responsibility. With the deeper truths lurking so close, Clara understood the necessity of confronting what she had avoided for so long. As anticipation coursed through her veins, she felt a profound fear begin to morph into a powerful resolve. And with that, as Clara nodded in agreement with the group's plans, she knew the road ahead would be tumultuous. If they were truly to forge ahead, they would have to brave the tempest of their insecurities. So she asked herself, was she ready to face the truths that had been waiting in shadowed corners? The moment had come for Clara to truly unveil herself, to step beyond her limitations. The very fabric of her identity was at stake, and a breathtaking thought struck her. What if this was not just a journey of art, but of rediscovering who she really was beneath it all? As she gazed at her companions, a new question entwined with daring anticipation began to unravel in her mind. What secrets lay unexpressed within her that could shift the very paradigm of her existence? Clara stood on the threshold of her future, heart thundering as she prepared to step beyond her previous definitions of self. Months had passed since she first arrived at the ranch, igniting both her ambitions and uncertainties. Now, the gathering she had initiated was not just an opportunity to foster artistic expression. It was a catalyst for her transformation, a vivid reimagining of herself that she had craved for so long. The living gallery erupted with energy as each participant poured their souls into creations, blossoming from their shared truths. Clara reveled in their vulnerability, sensing a shift taking place, not just in her companions, but within herself as well. No longer was she trapped within the confines of a mail-order bride's stigma. She was a budding artist, a vital force capable of weaving collective narratives into powerful tapestries of resilience. Underneath the colorful notes, sketches, and artistic concepts lay an unwavering truth. Her identity was not tied to anyone else's perception, but to her own voice and vision. She remembered the nights spent stargazing next to the campfire with Jake, sharing ambitions that had once seemed unreachable and now felt like ripe fruit waiting to be harvested. Every challenge she faced at the ranch had taught her that embracing discomfort was a conduit to personal greatness. As Clara watched her fellow ranchers engage with their creative expressions, something shifted within her. She was more than an artist. She had become embroiled in a journey of accountability to herself. Each stroke of paint, each word written in vulnerability resonated deeply, pulling her further away from the shadows of fear that had loomed large since her arrival. Mark's skepticism and Lila's challenges were now a symphony of motivation rather than obstacles. The night of the gallery's unveiling arrived, and Clara felt an exhilarating blend of confidence and anticipation. The traits of acceptance she had charged herself with were no longer distant. They were tangible and authentic. Townsfolk filed in, their expressions rippling between skepticism and inquisitiveness. This was her moment, her chance to stand not above them, but alongside them, eager to share the transformative power of vulnerability. As residents entered the dimly lit barn, where each piece hung under soft lights, Clara took a deep breath and felt the tidal wave of her own creativity flood through her. She stepped forward, eyes meeting those of Jake as he leaned against the wall, pride twinkling in his gaze. With his silent support ringing in her ears, she introduced the evening's theme: reclaiming our narratives. Throughout the night, Clara dedicated herself to listening as her neighbors shared their journeys. Every story spun threads of resilience that embroidered the quiet hall. She found herself grounding their experiences with her own, unearthing pieces of vulnerability in the process. The whispers of fear that had shackled her began to disperse beneath the weight of shared oversight. As the final pieces for the night were unveiled, Clara noticed her adoration for this collective project had given birth to something unexpected. She was no longer just a participant. She was a leader, a creator in multiple senses. Each brushstroke revealed a commitment to authenticity that shattered the doubts that once circled her like vultures. Later, as the evening wound down and laughter filled the once quiet space, Clara looked for Jake. She found him at the edge of the gathering, his expression an open book of admiration. Their bond had morphed into a partnership woven from the threads of understanding and mutual support. "You were incredible tonight," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You took them somewhere they needed to go." Clara beamed, but inside, she realized the true measure of her journey had been not only about them, but also about herself. As Jake leaned in for a kiss, she felt the remnants of insecurity fade like a mirage. This was the transformation she had longed for, grounded in purpose, fueled by collective creativity, and sparked by the greatest love she had discovered, her love for her own potential. The journey ahead promised obstacles and adventures alike. But Clara was ready. She had claimed her story, woven threads of belonging with those around her, and found an enduring sense of fulfillment that would accompany her through every future endeavor. In that moment, as the stars shimmered above the ranch, Clara whispered to herself a newfound mantra. She was not defined by her past. She was defined by her evolution. Clara had conquered the shadows, and in doing so, she had embraced the light of her inner strength. Now, commit to your own transformation. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel and never miss out on these impactful stories that inspire individual growth. Leave a like now to help fuel the algorithm and spread hope. Comment below your thoughts and theories about this conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this journey of overcoming. This is the moment to show your support for stories that matter.